I'm Peter Burlingame of the Self-Defense Initiative. This video is going to review the course curriculum for the Level 1 Advanced Pistol class. This will serve one as a reminder and review for the people that have already taken the class. It will also work to show people that haven't taken the class what we'll be covering in it, and maybe an inducement for them to take the class. We started out the class with an introduction. We talked about what we were going to cover that day, and we also all received a Self-Defense Initiative training logbook, and we talked about the importance of writing down what you did. The legal standard is, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So the training logbook serves as a record of what you've done and what you haven't done. This can become discoverable evidence and proof of what training you've had. Also, we learned that the average adult learner forgets half of what he learns in 24 hours. And after 7 days, he'll only retain 20% of what he learned. And considering this is important information, retaining only 20% is unacceptable. So writing it down, being able to review the information that you learned is a good way to up your retention to closer to 100%. What should go in this? Anything you do training-wise, even if it's just dry fire for 5 minutes in the evening, write it down. If you're taking a class, write down the instructor's name, the date, the location. Not a bad idea to write down what the weather conditions were, and everything you covered. The book is small so that it can be kept in a pocket along with your pen, and so during a break in class you can very quickly jot down what the last drill was or something the instructor said. So once again, you can retain it. We talked about the 4 rules of gun safety. 1, that you treat all guns as if they are always loaded. 2, that you never let your gun point at anything you're not willing to destroy. 3, that you keep your finger off the trigger, indexed up on the frame until you're on target and made the decision to fire. And 4, that you be sure of your target and what's around it. That you're responsible for every bullet you fire. We also talked about safety as far as operating on the range. I run a hot range. The guns were allowed to be loaded at all points and time, as long as the guns were kept holstered, unless you were given a command to do otherwise. Next on the agenda was a marksmanship tune-up. So we all got out online and we fired 5 careful shots to see where we were at with our trigger control and our sight alignment. Remedial action was taken if there was any problems. Next was the 3-step draw. So we learned the 3 steps to a quick and efficient draw from an open carry position. So we learned that the first and most important step was grip, where the right hand gets or the strong hand gets a full firing grip on the pistol, and while the right hand is moving to the pistol, the left hand or the support hand comes to a support position in the middle of the body. So the first step was grip. The second step was clear, where we get the gun out of the holster as soon as possible. The muzzle gets indexed onto the target, and we bring the gun up to about this position, where the gun is indexed on the target, the elbow is pointing straight back, fingers still in the index position. And this is also the retention position. So if there was a close threat, this is as far as the gun would go. I would shoot from here and then back out. The sport hand might do a strike at this point. So that is the clear position. Grip, clear. The last one was punch, where we push the gun straight out onto target. Right about here, the 2 hands come together and we come out on target. We also learned that the reholster should be done in the reverse, where you come back, the gun stays on target or in the threat area, the hands break apart here, we come back to the retention position, then go back into the holster. The reason being that if you do things in reverse exactly like forward, if a threat all of a sudden pops up, it's very easy to put things back together. Next on the agenda was keeping the gun running. First, by doing reloads. There's three basic types of reloads: the administrative reload, the tactical reload, and the combat or speed reload. The administrative reload is done with the gun in the holster. It's done sort of in a break between relays, and the gun doesn't get taken out of the holster, so it's safe to be done behind the line. The thumb reaches in, hits the magazine release. The partial magazine can be pulled out of the gun and replaced with a full one. Because we didn't shoot the gun empty, there's still a round in the chamber. The gun is now fully topped off. I can take this partial magazine, stuff rounds in it, and I'm good to go. The tactical reload is done when there's a break in the action. You've drawn your pistol, you've fired some rounds, and there's a lull in the action. For some reason, there's no existing threat at that point in time. Another one may pop up at any point in time, and we would like to get the gun in a state where it's as fully loaded as possible. So I fired some shots. I don't know how many are left in the gun, some, but it's not full. So I'm going to access a full magazine. I don't want to throw this one away because it still has some cartridges in it that may be needed later on. So I'm going to draw this magazine like I normally would, switch it to this position so that the forefinger and thumb are available to receive the partial. I'm going to insert the new one, and I'm going to put this partial one away. I now have a fully loaded pistol. By definition, this is done when there's a lull in the action, hopefully behind cover. Then I'm going to look and see if there's anyone else that needs my attention, and if not, then I can reholster. The speed reload, or the combat reload, is where we fired the gun empty in the middle of a fight. So we're at slide lock, the fight is still going on, and we've learned that as the support hand goes for the spare magazine, the strong hand hits the magazine release, dumping that magazine. We get the new magazine in place and grab the slide, let it go, come back in, get back into the fight. I believe this is the important one because the fight's still going on. We have slide lock. A lot of schools will teach that you should never let your gun go empty. You should always be monitoring how many rounds are in it and doing tack loads as necessary. But I think that's the reload that's not quite as important, because a tactical reload you're doing when there's a lull in the action. So how good do you really need to be at it? The one you really need to be good at is the combat or speed reload, because we're still in the fight and the gun's not functioning. So we need to be able to get the gun back into the fight quickly. So my preference is to practice that one more than the speed reload. We then did some various drills working from the holster, single shots on one target, multiple shots on one target, and then multiple shots on several targets. There's a very good chance that if you are in a fight, if you get attacked, that there will be more than one bad guy. So you should practice engaging more than one target each presentation. We culminated the morning with a person against person drill where we had two balloons set up on a target, two people standing next to each other. On the go command, they had to draw their pistol and break their balloon before their opponent could break their balloon. Whoever won stayed in position, the loser went down, would bring in another challenger. And so it was a sudden elimination event. It's a good drill because how fast do you need to go? We don't know. You have to go faster than the other guy, but you also have to hit. Sometimes the person that got their gun out first and fired the first shot did not win because they missed with their first shot. So it was a good lesson for teaching the balance between speed and accuracy. Yes, it's important to be fast, but it's also important to be accurate. And sometimes being just slightly slower but more accurate will win the game. After lunch, we came back and worked on movement. We learned that at this distance, anybody can hit because you can almost touch them with the gun. And we showed how the apparent target, whether it's you or the bad guy, becomes smaller with distance. So if you look at the screen and you measure how big my chest is at this point in the screen, and I take one step back and now measure how big my chest appears, you'll see that just the one step made me look half the size I was, which in reality translates to me being twice as hard to hit at this distance. And another step, this is only 2 steps back at this point, and I'm much, much smaller. At this distance, which is about 10 to 15 feet, it's very common for nobody to get hit. So while the fight will probably start here, because if you get attacked, if you get robbed, it'll probably be in close contact. The fight may start here. We don't want to stay here. So we learned to move smoothly, quickly, and safely. Because we're moving backwards, the chances of falling over are pretty good. So we want to make sure that when we move backwards, we do it without falling over. So we do that by not committing our weight until we're sure there's something to commit to. So we use our strong leg to move backwards first. We move the strong leg back. Now my weight is still on my support leg, so if there happens to be nothing back there for my right leg to get into, I haven't committed myself yet. I haven't lost my balance. So I move my strong leg. Once I can plant that, then I'll move my support leg. So the movement looks like this. Strong leg, support leg, strong leg, support leg. The legs are always going to end up in that fighting position where they're spread shoulder width apart and about the same distance front to back. Knees unlocked, weight very slightly forward, so you're in your fighting stance. Moving sideways is the same thing. Move the leg that's move the leg that's on the side you want to go to first, and then follow up with the other leg. Once we got the understanding of how to move safely, we then incorporated that with the draw. So once again, the fight may start here, not a good place to be. We want to get out. We want to make ourselves a smaller target by moving and by increasing the distance. And we also want to make it harder for the bad guy to shoot us by distracting him, by hitting him. So we drew while we moved and fired while we moved. Firing during the pauses and running the sights, riding the sights while we're moving. So the entire time I'm moving, I'm watching the sights. They won't always be on the target. But because I'm watching them, when I do get to that pause, after the second foot is moved, the sights are already lined up, I can press the trigger. So, boom, boom. And you can see the gun dipping in between the steps, and I don't want to shoot at that point. We then learned the 3 major ready positions, and when they're appropriate, what their weak spots are and what their strengths are. The typical one is the low ready position. When I went to gun sight, it was called the guard position, and I always like to start learning the ready positions from the final position, which is the shooting position. So this is where we want to end up. And the low ready is, the only thing that changes is my shoulders. So I just depress the gun to about a 45-degree angle. If you're shooting a weaver position where the support elbow is bent down towards the ground, not out to the side where it's going to pull the gun to the support side, elbow down to the ground, you come down and you'll see that the elbow touches the rib cage, and it's a pretty natural place to stop. So when I need to shoot, I just need to bring the gun up to about here. It's a good position. The downsides are if you're in a low ready position and somebody manages to get a hold of your arms, your gun, it's very easy for them to hold the gun down, and it'll be hard for you to raise your gun up to engage them. At that point, if that happens, the way to deal with that is, instead of trying to lift them up, lower yourself, and the gun will automatically come on target. The second ready position is called a few different names. Some people call it a third eye, some people call it compressed ready. I use it, the majority of the ready positions we use is this one, and so I just call it the ready position, but it goes by several names. Once again, we start in our shooting final position, and then I'm just going to break my elbows and bring the gun in. I want the gun to be level with the ground and pointed towards the threat area. I find this is a lot smoother and more efficient. The gun is already on target, and I can actually be shooting the entire time I come out if I think I'm close enough to be able to do that and get hits. But it's a very smooth motion to get up on target. The disadvantage of this is the gun's pointing horizontally, so if I turn around in a crowded situation, I'm going to be sweeping people with the muzzle. What I like to think about is what I learned from Clint Smith, was that he thinks and teaches that the muzzle should be between you and the potential threat area. So if you're walking down a hallway, this makes sense until an innocent person comes along, and then you're going to have to be muzzle aware and do what you need to do to keep from sweeping them with the muzzle if they don't deserve it. The third position we learned was Sewell, and Sewell is a very temporary position used in a very specific situation. What we do is, once again, we start in our final position, our shooting position. We bring the gun back like we would if we were coming to a compressed ready. And about here, the hands come apart. The support hand will flatten out and go against the chest. You'll see the thumbs kind of point together, and that allows them to come back together very smoothly. Now, what this allows us to do, it keeps the muzzle very close to us, which is good and bad. It's very easy to get the muzzle to the point where it's pointing at you, so you need to be aware of that. Don't let that happen. But we want the muzzle pointing about 1 foot to 2 feet in front of our feet. What the Sewell allows me to do is do a quick 360-degree turn without having to worry about covering anybody behind me or to the sides of me with a muzzle, whether it's my partners or family members or just innocent civilians. Whereas if I was just in the compressed ready and I turned around, I would have swept these people. The bad part of Sewell is it's kind of weak. I've got my elbow, I've got my wrist at an unusual angle, and I have my support hand off the gun. So from a retention standpoint, it's bad. Also for indexing, I've got this bent wrist, and coming up on target is not as efficient as in this position. No one ready position will work in all situations. That's why I teach 3. Those will cover you pretty much everywhere. And so then we did drills where we would move, draw, fire. As soon as we were sure the threat was neutralized, we'd come down to a low ready so we could see it on the ground, hypothetically. And then we would come to a Sewell position. We'd get off the exit we're on by taking a side step, pivoting and turning, and then turning around. It's important to get off the X because there may be somebody behind me that means to hurt me, and if they've got a gun pointed at me, just pivoting in place, the gun is still pointing at me. So as part of the Sewell position, I want to get off the line and turn around to see if there's a potential threat. We prefer to turn into known territory, so I would much rather step forward and do my pivot because I can see where that foot's stepping into, whereas if I step backwards, that's stepping into unknown territory. I do not know where that foot is going, and it may be off a curve or off a step or something like that, I lose my balance, fall down. So preferably step into known territory to do your pivot. Now, I do the Sewell position also for another reason. It teaches muzzle awareness. A lot of problems with teaching on a square range is we know this is the safe area. It's a great big backstop. As long as the gun's pointing this way, it's all right. But where's downrange in your home? Where's the backstop out on the street? There may not be a good place to point the gun. And how many places, how many teachers teach actively being muzzle aware, where you have to control the muzzle? So we have a line of students, and I want them to be able to turn around without sweeping the person next to them on line in either direction. So that's another reason we teach the stool position. Is this dangerous? As John Farnham says, oh boy. So we start this off dry. We'll unload the pistols, which also gives the students an opportunity to learn how to unload the pistol safely. And we'll do this dry a few times until we're sure that the students have it and we can trust them to go live. To finish off the day, we talked about the balance of speed and accuracy, one of the hardest lessons to learn in combat shooting. We had a practical application of it just before lunch when we did the man against man drill, because you had to be fast, but you also had to be accurate. But the balance between speed and accuracy is something that's continually changing, and it's an equation that always changes, and so you need to be able to adapt to it. You need to be able to read the situation, the conditions, and adapt how fast you are and how accurate you are to the conditions. Shooting somebody at 2 feet is a lot different than shooting somebody at 20 feet. So the balance between speed and accuracy continually changes based on conditions. Those conditions may be distance, that's a primary one. It may be visibility, it may be other people around. So when we're doing shooting, we do a lot of our shooting up close and backing out, but we'll do shooting at longer distances also, so that you get the feel for how fast can you hit. That's the key point there. Hitting is what matters. So how fast can you shoot and have at least an 80% chance of hitting the target? We then finished the day with doing standards and a qualification. The first standard was drawing to a compressed ready. The second standard was unloading the pistol. Pull the magazine first, rack the slide, let the cartridge go on the ground. Do not cover the ejection port while you're doing this, because you could have a kaboom. The primer could hit the ejector and have the cartridge go off while your hand is covering the ejection port. Let it go on the ground, we can pick it up later. Once we had the gun unloaded, we had to show low ready. Then we had to show the stool position. We had to do a side step and a 360-degree scan. Then we had to load the pistol. And then safely holster. For the qualification, we had to fire from the ready position at 3 yards, 4 shots in the center of mass, which was a 9-inch circle, in 2 seconds. So ready position, 3 yards, 4 shots in the center of mass in 2 seconds. Then at 10 yards, also from the ready position, fire 2 shots in the center of mass in 3 seconds. At 5 yards, from the holster, draw and fire 3 shots in 4 seconds. And then from the holster, also at 3 yards, draw and fire 1 shot in 2 seconds. It's always important to have standards and qualifications, because it gives you something to guide yourself by. So if this session I got an 85 and next session I got a 90, I know that I've improved. Or if I've got a 90 and next session I get an 80, I know that something went wrong. So that's what we covered in the Level 1 Advanced Pistol class for the Self-Defense Initiative. If you're interested, please give us a call, contact us, and we'll hook you up. Thanks for watching. Be safe out there.